I gripped the letter in my hand, my pulse quickening with every word. The sheer nerve, the absolute brazenness of the Maple Creek Estates Homeowners Association was beyond belief. They had the audacity to demand I remove my boat from my own lake within 48 hours or face a $500 a day fine. They even threatened to tow it at my expense. I couldn't help but chuckle at the sanctimonious tone of their letter, dripping with fake authority. These self-important HOA bureaucrats had no clue who they were dealing with. For years, they'd been using my family's lake without permission, and now they thought they could dictate terms on my own property? Oh, this was going to be good. By the way, where are you watching this from? Drop a comment below, because you're about to witness one of the most satisfying takedowns I've ever pulled off against these entitled HOA tyrants. My name's Jake Sullivan. 6 months ago, I was just another burned-out software engineer slogging through Silicon Valley. I'd spent a decade building a cybersecurity startup for financial firms. Grueling work, but it paid off. When a tech giant offered to buy us out for an amount with more zeros than I'd ever dreamed of, I decided it was time for a change. At 40, financially secure and exhausted, I craved peace, far from the endless meetings and corporate grind. That's when I remembered the lake house. Sullivan Lake had been in my family for 3 generations. My grandfather, a former commercial fisherman turned conservationist, bought the 50-acre lake and surrounding land in the 1950s, back when the area was just fields and forests. He built a simple cabin by the shore and spent his retirement fishing, writing, and teaching local kids to respect nature. I can still picture those summer days with him, learning to cast a line and hearing his tales of crystal-clear waters you could see 20 feet down. He was a local legend, famous for stopping a mining company from wrecking the watershed. "Water's life, Jake," he'd say, his voice rough but kind. "Not just for fish, for everyone. Never let anyone tell you profit matters more than protecting what nature gave us." Those words stuck with me, even as I chased a tech career far from the lake. My father kept up the property but rarely used it, always on the move for work. He was a city guy, never bonded with the lake like Grandpa and I did. When both passed, Grandpa at 92 and Dad unexpectedly at 67 from a heart attack, the lake and cabin became mine. I hadn't visited in nearly 5 years, too busy building my company and navigating the cutthroat tech world. But now, it felt like the perfect escape. I renovated the cabin, keeping its rustic vibe while adding modern touches like fast Wi-Fi and new plumbing, and moved in as winter turned to spring. The tranquility was exactly what I needed. Mornings with coffee on the dock, afternoons tinkering around the property, and evenings watching sunsets from my small fishing boat. The stress of deadlines faded, replaced by the calm rhythm of lake life. It was perfect until the HOA decided to play dictator. That morning started like any other. I brewed strong coffee and headed to the dock where my 16-foot aluminum fishing boat was tied up. It wasn't fancy, just a sturdy, practical boat perfect for solo fishing, passed down from my grandfather. Though weathered, I'd kept it in great shape. There was something grounding about using the same boat he'd fished from, gliding over the same waters, watching the same shores. But that morning, I spotted it immediately. A garish orange violation notice taped to my boat. In bold letters, it declared my boat unauthorized and a violation of community aesthetic standards. It demanded removal from community waters and insisted all boats be registered with the HOA, complete with their stickers. I laughed, thinking it was a joke, until I found an official letter in my mailbox, stamped with the HOA's letterhead and signed by Richard Wilkins, their president. As I read, my phone rang. It was Ray Delgado, my nearest neighbor and a friend of my grandfather's. Ray, a retired carpenter in his mid-70s with a permanent tan and calloused hands, lived a quarter-mile down the shore in a house he'd built himself. We'd bonded over and a shared disdain for pointless rules. "Morning, Jake," he said with a wry chuckle. "Looks like the HOA's welcome wagon found you." I told him about the notice, and he sighed. Those vultures have been getting bolder every year. Ever since they built that ritzy development on the north side a decade ago, they act like they own everything within 5 miles. Your grandpa would have chased them off with a shotgun loaded with rock salt. I grinned at the image, Grandpa was known for handling trespassers directly. Ray mentioned the HOA had tried to hassle him once about his unsightly boat shed, but he'd shut them down. He also dropped a bombshell. The HOA had been using my lake for their fancy fishing tournaments for years, calling it the Elite Anglers Club, or some pompous nonsense. Your grandpa would be spinning in his grave, Ray said. They treat your lake like their private country club. Shocked, I dug online and found the HOA's website, flaunting photos of their annual lakeside fishing derby on my lake. Smiling men in pricey gear held up fish, posing on my property's eastern shore with tents, barbecues, and a temporary dock they'd set up. Their Elite Anglers Club page bragged about exclusive access to prime fishing waters with their next big tournament, a $5,000 prize event with a lakeside barbecue, set for the following weekend. They were planning a massive party on my land without asking. The gall was staggering. Scrolling through years of photos, I saw they'd been doing this for at least 5 years, taking advantage of the cabin's vacancy to claim control. One post even called Sullivan Lake our community's crown jewel, as if they owned it. I needed legal advice, so I called Emma Porter, a college friend, an environmental lawyer specializing in water rights and land use. After I explained, she laughed. Let me get this straight. You own the lake, deed, water rights, everything, and they're telling you can't have a boat on it? They're trespassing Jake, plain and simple. She advised gathering evidence before responding to their notice and offered to drive up that weekend to review my deeds. Set up security cameras around the lake, she added. And don't let them touch your boat. That's theft. Document everything. Following Emma's advice, I installed high-res, motion-activated cameras with night vision around the lake, focusing on areas the HOA used for events. I also found my grandfather's original deeds and a 2010 survey map from my father, confirming I owned the lake, its water rights, and all land 15 feet past the high water mark. Then came an email, an invitation to an HOA meeting sent to everyone in the area. Curious, I decided to attend and see Richard Wilkins in action. The meeting was in the Maple Creek Estates Community Center, a gaudy building with columns and a fountain that screamed trying too hard. I sat in the back, watching about 30 residents, most looking bored. Richard Wilkins was exactly as I'd pictured. Mid-50s, silver hair perfectly styled, in a blue blazer with a fake country club smile. He droned on about lawn heights and mailbox designs before mentioning an unauthorized boat on community waters. His tone dripped with irritation as he stressed that all watercraft must be HOA registered and meet aesthetic guidelines to maintain the lake's pristine appearance. I couldn't resist. I raised my hand. Wilkins, clearly unused to interruptions, nodded at me. Keeping my tone polite, I asked, "When you say community waters, who exactly owns the lake?" Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Wilkins' smile tightened. The lake is a community resource under HOA management, as it has been since the development began. His dismissive tone was meant to end the discussion, but I pressed. Does the HOA have a deed, or is it county-owned with an HOA agreement? A few residents perked up, and Wilkins' knuckles whitened on the podium. There are historical arrangements, he snapped. The details aren't relevant here, but the HOA has full authority over lake activities. I nodded innocently, noting his discomfort as he quickly changed topics. After the meeting, Gerald Thompson, president of the Elite Anglers Club, approached me. In his 60s, with a weathered face and a flashy fishing vest, he sized me up. New to the neighborhood? When I mentioned I'd moved into the Sullivan place, his eyes lit up with calculation. The old Sullivan cabin? We thought it was abandoned. I clarified it was very much mine, introducing myself as Jake Sullivan. Recognition flickered. He met my grandfather once and called him quite a character, not meaning it kindly. He offered me a spot in his exclusive fishing club, boasting about their access to the lake's best spots. The irony of being offered access to my own lake was almost too much, but I played along, learning their championship was the next Saturday on the East Shore. As I left, I overheard Wilkins whispering to Gerald and Karen Mitchell, the HOA vice president, about accelerating the timeline and handling the Sullivan situation. Their glances my way confirmed they were worried about me. In a parking lot, Wilkins pulled up in a BMW, all fake charm. "Mr. Sullivan, your cabin could use some updates to meet community standards. That boat, for instance, it's a bit rustic." I played dumb. I didn't know my property was under HOA jurisdiction. His smile didn't waver, but his eyes did. "All properties here are part of our community vision." When I mentioned my family's 1953 deed, his mask slipped for a split second before he suggested our lawyers talk. The battle lines were drawn. When I got home, my boat was gone, replaced by another violation notice saying it had been impounded for non-compliance and would cost $750 to reclaim, plus signing a compliance agreement. If unclaimed in 30 days, it'd be sold at auction. Furious, I paced the dock but remembered Grandpa's advice. When you're mad, slow down and think clearer. This wasn't just about a boat. It was about bullies exploiting my family's land. I called the sheriff, who called it a civil matter, and suggested I deal with the HOA directly, hinting at their local influence. I suspected they had friends in high places. Emma arrived the next morning, and we pored over my documents. The deeds were airtight, confirming my ownership of the lake and surrounding land. Emma found county records showing the HOA's development plans explicitly excluded Sullivan Lake as private property. "They've been lying to their residents," she said, pointing to the records. Security footage already showed residents launching boats on my land, thinking it was HOA property. Ray stopped by with news. His niece at the county planning department saw an HOA application for a luxury lakeside resort with condos, a marina, and a golf course on my lake. Wilkins and his cronies were planning a multi-million-dollar project on land they didn't own, assuming I'd sell or not notice. Emma and I strategized over diner takeout. She suggested a cease and desist and trespassing charges, but advised waiting to learn more about their plans. We sent a polite letter requesting HOA documents on lake ownership and the fishing club's usage, worded to avoid tipping our hand. We let the tournament proceed, cameras rolling to catch their trespassing. The HOA's lawyer, Steve Barnes, sent a vague letter threatening legal action for interfering with community operations, but it lacked specific legal citations, a sign they were bluffing. I met Sarah Lynn, a local reporter, at a cafe. She was intrigued by the HOA's overreach and the resort rumors. "If they're planning on private land without consent, that's huge," she said, taking notes. I asked her to hold off publishing, but dig into the investors. The day before the tournament, Wilkins showed up at my cabin, all smiles, offering to let my boat stay if I signed an agreement acknowledging HOA Lake Authority. I asked about the tournament and resort plans, catching him off guard. His tense response confirmed he was hiding something. I said my lawyer would review the agreement, and he left, barely hiding his frustration. Tournament day was sunny. From my cabin, I watched trucks and boats flood the East Shore. Gerald Thompson set up tents and a banner for the 15th Annual Elite Anglers Championship. Emma and I spied with binoculars, spotting Wilkins with investors, pitching the resort with brochures. We overheard him call me a holdout they were negotiating with, claiming they'd controlled the lake for years. We got all on camera. While the tournament buzzed, Emma filed an emergency injunction, backed by our evidence. The judge, seeing my clear ownership and the HOA's trespassing, granted it instantly. With a sheriff's deputy, we confronted the crowd. The deputy announced they were on private property and must leave. Gerald protested, claiming 15 years of tournaments, but Emma presented the injunction and deeds, stating the HOA had no authority. Wilkins, losing his cool, insisted the lake was under HOA control, but residents began questioning him. One asked if their HOA fees for lake access were a lie. The investors bailed, and the crowd dispersed. Sarah's article hit the next day, exposing the HOA's deception and resort scheme. It went viral, sparking an emergency HOA meeting where residents demanded answers. Wilkins was absent, and the board crumbled, with resignations piling up. I offered a solution. Residents could enjoy the lake if the HOA respected my rights. We formed the Sullivan Lake Conservation Trust, allowing limited public access with permits funding conservation. The fishing club reformed, open to all who followed eco-friendly rules. The East Shore became a public park with a fishing pier dedicated to my grandfather with a saying, "Water is life, not a commodity." Wilkins vanished after Sarah uncovered his past as Richard Williams, a disgraced Florida broker who'd pulled similar scams. The county investigated the HOA's finances, and Wilkins investors sued him for fraud. My boat was returned, and I repainted it, keeping its rustic charm. Now I fish on my lake, often with Ray, reflecting on how standing firm turned a fight into a community win. The lake's thriving, and Grandpa will be proud.